Y'all, welcome back to Kentucky Fried Wargaming, where two guys who aren't qualified to talk about anything decide to talk about a game with hard math and chance. I'm Joe.
And I'm John.
And on this episode, we're doing a follow-up to something we talked about previously, where we had said long ago in the long-forgotten year of 2023, I think back in October or November is when we put out the video, that we were going to start up a league with some people locally. And we were going to kind of jump into the deep end of Conquest and just try to feel our way through this thing. And that we would kind of report back how it went for us after the league was done. And, well, league's done. There's going to be a big group battle coming up, but the league itself, like the actual Escalation League part, is over with. And we figured now would be the time that, we kind of got to pay the piper and follow up on how it went for us. And also, maybe try to give some helpful advice for other people if y'all out there want to run your own Escalation League to get other people into Conquest.
Or if you're interested in joining one and what to expect.
Yep. Because truly, I think a little bit of knowledge on the front end can help you have a really great time on the back end. And we want to be able to set you up with that sort of good footing so you can go in with whatever army you're into and at least have a good time, if nothing else. But first, we've got to talk about hobby time and games played. John?
Yes.
What you been up to?
A lot, actually. A ton. I ran out of hobby supplies to finish my Vadroon. Just straight up ran out of mineral spirits. So I didn't get to finish all of my Vadroon before Conquest Day. But that's okay. Just have 2 regiments left in that army until I get more, which I'm planning on. Tontor, here I come.
I would love to point at you and laugh, but I only finished by the skin of my teeth with the lightest, barest dusting of basing material left over. And my replacement basing material wouldn't have gotten here until a week late. So I can't throw stones in this absolutely shatter-prone glass house.
That's okay. I made repentance for it because I have built almost an entire table of 40k terrain using the GW tournament standards. I have 1 piece left to build on a footprint, on a 5 by 10 inch footprint, I believe.
Mm-hmm. What are you using for the footprints? What material?
I'm using PVC foam board I found at a Michael's. That is what I'm using.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it works really well. I think if I had to do it again, I would probably wrap it in some masking tape along the edges to make added durability. But I'm already too far gone to be able to keep doing that, so I'm just going to live with the mistakes I've made. Other than that, I've built more World Eaters. I've built a bunch of 8-bound. I have a bunch of 8-bound now. I printed a proxy for something that I didn't like the original kit for. And then I have built my first 100 Kingdoms model. Yeah, I built my Priory Commander. Because I have 2 start collectings for 100 Kingdoms, so I'm looking down the barrel of a second Conquest army. If that tells you anything about how much I've enjoyed this game.
Spoiler alert, John. Jeez, can't take you anywhere.
That's true. You really can't. I play knights in almost every game I play, but also the 8-foot tall Dummy Mommy Orcs. So with dinosaurs, I'm unpredictable. I'm a wild card, as they would say.
You can't be predictable and a wild card.
I said unpredictable. No, I didn't. I said predictable.
I can't hear the tape back, but we're gonna find out here in a second.
It's all right. What did you do for hobby wise? Because all of mine was just all over the place. Because I can't focus on one task. I have to do 12 of them at the same time while watching X-Files, or I can't feel alive.
Well, mine is also fairly all over the place, if I'm being totally honest. I've got a friend who I'm gonna get ready to play a learner game at 2K or 40K with, and I'm gonna play Tau against them because I think it will give them a better time than Custodes. So I've been making sure I've got that army up to 2,000 points because the points drops were incredible for the new edition. So I had to print and build 3 more crisis suits, 2 more broadsides, and a piranha, which now are built. The piranha is like 70% done, but the other stuff is built. They're put on paces and glued down, so they're ready to actually be played, which is really nice. Secondarily, I also did a lot of Conquest, which you'll be shocked to hear.
Oh no.
I had to finish painting the last step up of my Nord's army, which was 2 units of Finner Beast Pack, which are like big dire wolves, which I painted up, testing out like painted on fur texture for the first time. That was pretty cool. And then also the Vargir Lord, which is just like a werewolf hero with a claymore. It's awesome. That I similarly did for texture stuff with more details on them. And that got me fully done with my Nord's army. It's actually my first ever fully painted 2K army in any game I've ever played.
It's almost poetic as someone with werewolves.
Yeah, I'm a 3-wolf moon kid, and I'm not even recovering. I am what I am. They said I'd grow out of it. I didn't.
I want you to know, I went to Walmart like 2 days before last Saturday trying to see if they had a 3-wolf moon shirt to get you as a surprise. They didn't, but
hallelujah.
I would
little
make
miracles.
I would make you wear it.
Little miracles. But yeah, that army is now fully painted at 2K points, which was pretty cool to put on the table for the first time. For our league matches, which we got 3 matches in a day. That was pretty cool.
I got in 2, but yeah, you got in 3.
So I got to really like push the 2,000 point painted Nords, which was really nice. And then the store has an Age of Sigmar League that just started this week. And I'm going to play Flesh Eater Courts throughout all of that. And I have been working on my really dramatic, like horror movie poster inspired Flesh Eater Court army. And I had just 1 hero left to paint and a big blob of 20 ghouls to get that army up to 2,000 points fully painted. And I managed to pull that off over the past week. So last week I had 0 fully painted armies. This week I have 2 fully painted armies, which is a very weird fact to come to terms with in my little meat brain.
And neither of them are elite armies.
Nope.
Which is also shocking considering who you are.
I'm just as surprised. Although the Nords, I brought the average number down because of the giants and the monsters. Like the giants bring the number down.
Sure.
Thankfully.
You also spent a long time on those Bochosen.
You're not wrong. I just hate it. No, it was a fun time. It was a time-consuming time, but it was a fun time. And I also built up my test mini that I'm going to do for Dwegum. Because Dwegum is, I mean, again, spoiler alert for what we're about to talk about in a few minutes, but I am ready to sort of start slowly piecing together a second army. Just so I have options on what to play, or I could give people demo games if someone wants to learn Conquest, so they don't have to like have their own minis. So I want to put together a second army. But to do that, I have to know how I'm going to paint it. And I truly am a little up in the air currently, and have been for a minute until they shared something on Instagram that was like a Dwegum and shifty light green emerald armor with like flames smoking magma horns coming out of his head. And I don't know who the hell that dude is, but like, I'm into it. Let's go. I want to try to do something like that flavor.
Maybe like spray, like maybe airbrush metallics, and then you use like a emerald almost tint over it.
Yeah.
Like
I have a couple of different thoughts that I'm going to have to try out, which is why I have 1 Infernal Automata for the First Blood Start Collecting box, because they only give you 1, and I'm not going to be running Infernal Automata that I'm going to reinforce ever. So I have this one mini that is just like my little tester mini, and I have dubbed him Ted, and Tester Ted is going to suffer for the cause, so I could test out this scheme and how to get there. I've currently got 2 sort of competing ideas. The first is to Essentially, all over cover it in a dark metallic airbrushed Vallejo metal color, one of their
Hmm.
dark metals. And then to zenithal highlight from above a like steel color, so it gets a little bit of drama and shadow. And then to filter all of that with a contrast or an ink that's really, really, really thinned down. Or secondarily, I could sort of try to push the texture and cover it dramatically with like a dark metallic, maybe leave some shadows non-metallic-y and stuff just to like up that contrast a little. And then come in and dry brush heavily a lighter steel color all over instead of putting that through an airbrush. So it kind of grabs edges and then filter all of that. Those are my two competing ideas. So I'll have to play with application.
Yeah.
I don't know which one will be successful. We'll see. I can see the benefits of both. I suspect the texture might look better with the way those models are designed, but it's hard to say until I see it on a mini.
Yeah, I think the dry brush method's probably going to be the better one, just because looking at Dwega models and the reference art that you're wanting, I think you're going to want those edges to show blends more, I think. But
yeah, I think I
worth
want
testing both.
And I'm probably gonna have to play around with the filter a little bit. Right now, I'm kind of leaning towards like filtering with a thin down contrast paint, but an ink could also maybe do it. They're just awfully strong, so I'd have to thin a lot. Yeah, I'm in a realm of like a paint scheme that I haven't done before, but it's kind of fun. I'm just gonna take it little steps at a time and slowly feel my way through it, like I did with the Flesh Eater quartz, and that went really well.
Yep,
So Tester Ted's progress will be coming up. And because I might need to get Ted and his compatriots together for a future repeat league. And we should talk about it. Play the music. So I guess at the start, we've got to give this disclaimer. We are not experts in Conquest. Certainly not like ripping tournament wins here. We're not 5-0 in Worlds. We're just folks who have some experience and some opinions. And we think they can be helpful for people who are more casual and who are looking to have a good time and learn. So we're just going to try to give you our battle-tested observations, thoughts, opinions. We're each now over 20 matches apiece.
Mm-hmm.
So, which isn't a mountain of experience, but it's a fair amount, I would say, to at least start to feel.
I think it's a good, like, new player foundational experience. Like, there are definitely a lot of other content creators for Conquest that have more experience. They probably have some better opinions, not gonna lie. Like, they probably have stuff that's more backed up with experience than we have. But we are people who have just started this within, like, the last 4 or 5 months. And like, so we have that kind of experience, that kind of perspective of someone else who is probably watching this video and starting early on in this game and probably like wonder what to expect. You sort of lose the more you play a game. You sort of get used to how things are and don't remember how things were.
Yeah, and I think it also helps that John and I have a background where we've run events together for years now.
Yeah. And like, not just tabletop, but like in general, like we've done game design stuff, we've done a bunch of stuff together, and like can have pretty critical conversations about a lot of these things.
Like 85 people weekend long LARP things, did game design rules, and we're up to what, almost 10 Joe Hammer cons, as we call them, like Warhammer weekends that we organize and put on.
Yeah.
So we also come into it with a slightly different perspective in that we are new to this game, but we're not new to the idea of running events or helping to design events or try to like structure our own events to be more helpful for our goals, which I think while doesn't help us with like win rates or tournament stats or anything like that, I think it provides a unique opportunity that we can hopefully use to help y'all out there have a good time yourselves for whatever it is you're looking for in a potential league. You know, if you're out there and you're listening to us talk about Conquest for a minute and you're new to Conquest, you're thinking about trying Conquest, One of the ways that I would say is most common to do it is to start with some sort of escalation league.
Mm-hmm.
And let's be honest, there's a lot of benefits to that. Largely, the buy-in is much lower than like a 2,000 point tournament to be your first sort of learning experience.
Yeah, and especially with like Conquest, the entry point really for Conquest can just be I bought a box of models. Like I bought a start collecting box essentially. I bought a 5th anniversary supercharged starter 1-player starter box. Right? They always have a starter box you can buy for your army, and it always starts at about 800 to 1,000 points depending on upgrades, which is about half the normal army size of 2,000 points, and it's priced at like 160 retail, but like you can find them discounted at stores online and like in person, and like different people have affiliate links that'll like make it cheaper. We don't have an affiliate link. Go use like someone else's.
I highly recommend Doug from 2 Plus Talk, actually. Like,
Yeah.
puts out great Conquest lore if you want to order online specifically. And you don't got a local shop near you to get it, and you want to get a little discount, Doug's got a great one.
Yeah.
Or if you're anywhere near Cincinnati, Tactical Retreat Gaming on the east side of Cincinnati stocks it. You could get some money off MSRP. I think that's the only place anywhere near me I know that stocks it. But like,
And that's where we play.
It's where we play. But if you could, find a shop that's offering some sort of discount off of 160, you're gonna probably end up paying not a whole lot over 100 to get started. So for an escalation league, that's pretty approachable, which is why I think it's a very common way people are gonna play. Two, and it's why it's common in not just Conquest but other game systems. It also keeps the number of units you need to track down, because you're going to be trying to learn the core rules. It's going to be hard for you to keep track of like 11 or 12 regiments in your army if you don't know how combat sequences or how movement works or any of those things.
Especially movement.
Especially movement, because it's so weird here if it's your first rank and flank. For me, this was my first true rank and flank, and it was a learning curve for a minute. So not only price, but also it just eases the amount of mental load. And if you find like a Vanguard who can help you, or you find the right vibe, they're just fun, which draws a lot of newer casual people to try them for their first outing.
Yep.
I mean, and for a lot of it, that's what drew us to it. And why, when we were going to learn, we sort of talked to the local Vanguard about the idea of leagues happening. He was already hearing chatter of leagues happening up north of us, and it all just sort of came together where, us and a couple of other people locally were interested at a similar time that a league could start up. So we gave it a go, and we went into it with very little expectation, because who knows what this is going to be like, right? And I think we should just sort of start with talking through how we felt it went. John, what's your big thoughts? Like your big top-level thoughts?
So, top level thoughts. I have played in escalation leagues in AOS, in 40k, in Old Warhammer Fantasy, in Song of Ice and Fire, in War Hordes, when that was a thing, War Machine and Hordes, and Infinity, back when Infinity first came out. And I think this was probably the most fun.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there are some rough spots, but overall, I think this game is very, very, very fun. I think even through escalation leagues or just in general, it has a level of playability that is really engaging throughout the entire time. Like, you will lose track of how much time has passed while playing the game in a way that is a little bit more rare in other war games. Like, it's very paced well. And I think that leads to better times during an escalation league, because you get to like feel jazz the whole time. And then immediately after, you're like, I want to do another. Let's go. Which
is how we ended up playing at the shop till 3 a.m. multiple times.
Like, we got there at noon, played 15 hours, and we were like, why are we doing this to ourselves? And we're like, next time we're not gonna play out late, and then we absolutely do it again. Like,
and we had a great time again.
Yeah, and we don't regret it. We're just like, okay, we'll just gotta live like this now.
Just gonna be tired, but had a great time. Yeah, I agree. It was a like I've done a number of escalation leagues, much like John. I've done them in Age of Sigmar. I've done them in 40K. I've done a small one in A Song of Ice and Fire. And I enjoy escalation leagues in general, largely for me as a tool to do hobby, like to have a way to slow grow a force, both in terms of building and painting, which is just generally good. And in a new game, it's a great way to play. And I've never had an escalation league where like those things weren't true. But here the vibe was immaculate. And that's in part because of the shop we played at and like the people we had. But I think also the game lends itself to that. If you are the type of person who's drawn to this sort of like tactical, well, not tactical, strategic sort of stacking activation situation, you might be more open to kind of wanting to learn something rather than necessarily storm through another person. Because it's very back and forthy, and you're going to have to talk to someone to learn their force and figure out how to stack your deck. And I think that opened up some conversations that otherwise could have been hard ice to break.
Yeah, and like, how do I put this? If you've ever played like Magic the Gathering or like Pokemon or like Yu-Gi-Oh or like any sort of card game, there's a feeling you get when you have when you're on the draw on each other of like, what's the other person going to do?
Mm-hmm.
That when added into a miniatures game becomes really, really, really fun. Really, really, really fun. In an army style game. Because it adds a level of unpredictability that mixed with like the deployment system of the game is like it keeps you coming back for more. And it keeps you wanting to come back for each point level in an escalation league because it feels like it's going to change every time the points go up. Until you eventually get to 2K, where the game is where it's sort of balanced and where it's supposed to be at. And now you start seeing like, oh, all these skills I learned at each of these games leading up to here has prepared me to see why this is different at 2K, and then prepare me for taking this point and then improving on it categorically as I keep playing.
Yeah, it was a little hard to get my head around the idea of the activation stack. I think the fact that we played a lot of Magic the Gathering and stuff actually helped me a lot. But what I really liked about it is that one, it's back and forth, which means there's far less dead time in Conquest than I have in like 40K. Where sometimes there have been just whole segments of the game I can't interact with at all. And when you have your turn and like you, for example, in 9th edition, there was like a magic phase, essentially, in 40K. I play tap. I cannot affect magic phase. I cannot cast spells. I cannot unbind spells. I can't change your spell targets. Like I have no mechanics that interact with that mechanic. And that's cool from a game design perspective. They're not a Magic faction. That's actually really great. But from a game perspective, that's difficult when it's set up. One person takes their whole turn. And you have to wait. And then a good portion of that turn, you might as well not be present. And I don't mean that superfluously. Like, there were multiple times where Seth is our editor. He plays Thousand Suns. Where I would look at him and go, hey, I'm just going to go, like, get us a couple of drinks, and I'll be back in, like, 10 minutes. Let me know how much damage I eat. Because I can't do anything about it, and I just got to be twiddling my thumbs. I might as well get us a refills. And in Conquest, I've yet to have that feeling. Because it's, at the worst, you're going to draw a hero card that has, like, one complicated spell to cast. Maybe two. And then it's going to pass back to me. So
I mean, sometimes you just pull a character card and they go, huh, and then they don't do anything.
Don't get me started. It's one of my fundamental gripes. It's another episode. Characters are frustrating.
We will talk about characters in Conquest in an episode all of their own.
They're not, like, bad or anything. They're just
weird.
Bland.
The concept is a little different.
They're real bland, and there's room for more fun stuff. I wish they took, like, rules ideas, because I feel like we keep coming up with stuff. But yeah, generally speaking, like, there's less time where I'm doing nothing. So it's a lot more back and forth, which I really, really enjoyed. And that only got more so as we stepped up to 2K. And the closer we got to 2K, the more interactive the armies got with each other.
Yeah, and like a lot of our opinions got actively challenged. So like I think a lot of what we're going to say is we're going to bring up hurdles or like struggles, and then we're going to like give our take on them or like what we would do, right? The first one I kind of want to bring up is expectations have to change while you're playing. I think you can back up this one. Like Old Dominion at 500 points felt oppressive.
It was very rough.
Terrible.
Very rough.
Partially because of the way their rules are written, and partially because of like the fact that they are the army that doesn't take resolve. Which, if you haven't played the game, resolve is like half of like it's. You take additional damage based off of how many wounds you take in resolve. So not taking that basically means you take less damage.
And a lot less. I mean, I don't know if it's quite half of the damage in the game causes resolve, because shooting doesn't, but most damage in the game causes resolve. So you got to be ignoring between like 30-40% of that. And
they have like higher points cost for that, but at low point values, that doesn't really matter. Like you don't see that, right? And so like we had this expectation at 500 points and 1,000 points, like Old Dominion are just really, really tough to deal with. They're really difficult. And we got to 2K and it's like, oh no, this is way more balanced, right? Like as we continued playing the game, these expectations we had got challenged, right? So if you're a normal, I wouldn't say normal, if you're like the kind of 40K or AOS player who hasn't played another game, and so you're sort of used to a mechanic is what it is, and you just have to figure out how to like always deal with it. That's probably going to get challenged here throughout the Escalation League, because a lot of these mechanics drastically change at different point values, and a lot of like how you react changes at higher point values.
Mm-hmm.
The game's pretty balanced, if we're being honest.
At 2K, yeah, it's pretty decent. There are some like very pinpoint challenges that like they're trying to hem in, and they're figuring out how they want to work on, but they're quite particular in terms of their problem. Whereas I feel like in other systems, the problems can be wider spread. Now, that is partially because this is a smaller game in general, but it also is probably because of their philosophy of like lighter touch game design combined with slow, consistent changes, not just constrained to points. Like, there's something to be said for that. But truly, like, it would be unfair to say, like, oh, Conquest, terrible at low points, bad. Because most of the games we listed earlier are built around a particular point level for balance and tournament play.
I mean, the last time we tried to play like a 500-point game of 40K, it ended poorly.
Terribly. AOS is better at it, but that's 40K is not the bar you want to hold for like a good game design being scalable. So it is not a strictly Conquest thing. When you balance a game for 2,000 points and then you try to play that game with a quarter of the points on the table to work with, that's always going to change things. But I will say this one felt for me almost as rough as 40K in terms of how swingy it was at low points levels.
Yeah. I think what softens that blow a little bit is that the game is so engaging and fast. Because, like, at least if we trade units, right? If I have 3 units on the table, you have 3 units on the table, and you kill one of my units, and I kill one of your units, and you kill one of my units, and the game's over. At least I still, like, got to play. Whereas, like, there's a distinct possibility in 40K where you can just put your stuff on the table, not really knowing the game, and just get shot off the table turn 1 by your opponent. They brought 2 guard tanks and, like, a infantry squad with a company commander. The 2 tanks got in range, shot all your stuff to death.
GG.
Like, what'd you learn? Nothing.
That guard busted. But, like, it's one of those things that we did not quite brace for how skewy it was going to be. And, for example, Seth's Old Dominion felt just, like, insurmountable at 500 points and 1,000 points. Because normally the downside of that army is one, that it doesn't get to like turn on until later in the game.
Mm-hmm.
The idea for Old Dominion is that they're like cool, spooky Roman zombies. And they don't get to have their coolest powers until enough stuff dies from their army to get all the death magic to like come together and coalesce inside of them. So normally they're not going to get all of their cool abilities until turn 3 or turn 4, which slows them down a bit. At low point values, it is scaled so they start ready to go. They get a bunch of free points, so they start already turned on, which takes one of their huge downsides as a faction and just gets rid of it.
Yep.
Also, normally they're quite slow. They can't get on objectives. People are faster than them, so they struggle. But at low point values, we were playing on a smaller table size.
Mm-hmm. And
then again, at a smaller table, you took a second of their big weaknesses and you threw that out too. And they also have units like the horse ponies that, like, without knowing it, you could pretty consistently wipe 2 units out of your opponent's army per activation of them.
Yep.
And when your army is only 4 units, wiping 2 of them is half your opponent's force in one activation. And again, very swingy. So truly, we were like, what do we even do against this? I don't even know what to do. And then we got up to 1,500 points. We got up to 2,000 points. And that force started to then get its drawbacks handed to it. They didn't start turned on. The boards were max size. And then the Old Dominion didn't at all feel insurmountable. We had play against them. Mm-hmm. Which sort of leaves us in a middle spot, which is what we really want to relay, is that, like, the observations we felt were right. They were real. But we could not see that at 2,000 it would change, because we weren't there yet.
Yeah. And so I think
for viewers, though, you can just preempt that yourself.
Yeah, like you can just go into it with a different mindset. Like the mindset is these games are learning games. Like you're learning like the mechanical motions of the game, right? Like you don't learn how to bike across town you still have training wheels on. Just accept you got training wheels on and play with the training wheels, and then take the training wheels off, and then try to go down the block. Got down to the block, well, now try to go down to the gas station. All right, you got down to the gas station, well, now try getting halfway across town. All right, cool. Now try to get fully across town, right? Like, take the steps for what they are, steps to learn the game, and you'll have a much better time. And, like, I think that's pretty self-evident for, like, an escalation league. But with this game, I think it's really worth stating because so much of this game is different from other war games. Deployment is completely unique. The command card's completely unique. The way you have character upgrades and characters work, all of it is very, very unique and very different. So just take your time and learn it. Really do. Like, there'll still be some parallels, but it truly just feels like a completely different experience.
And also, to try to mitigate that point skew, if we were going to run our own league in the future, or we were going to, like, advise our Vanguard to maybe try to, like, improve one in the future, because we're going to run another league. Like, well, we're going to be in another league. The store is going to run another league. I'm not saying John and I ran this one. We might run one. I don't know. We've really had a good time. Maybe become Vanguards if we continue to have a lot of fun with this community.
Yeah. And we got a bunch of friends who want to get into playing it. They just haven't, like, jumped on the wagon yet.
So a league might help them. But if we were going to do that, I think I would... we were talking to our Vanguard about this. Starting at higher points levels just helps you. Like, you need to get your point levels up and quickly. Common sort of wisdom from other war games is that for escalation, usually, you can always vary it. You start off at 500, you play some games, you jump to 1K, you play some games, you jump to 15, you play some games, then you jump to 2K. 500 points at a time, starting at 500. Here, I would start at 8.
Yeah, I think 8's the better sweet spot. Some armies struggle with that, because, like, the intention is, like, you can start the game with the starter box, right? That you should be able to have, like, 4 buddies all get together and are like, yeah, I want to do this conquest thing. We're each going to get a starter box for the faction we really like from like a store. We're going to build it, or maybe paint some of it. Who knows? And we're just going to play a bunch of games together and see how we like it. At 800 points, most of the factions, all the factions have at least 800 points in the box. Most of the factions will have more. So you might have to take some stuff out. And for the stuff that's lower, maybe add some relics. But 800 points allows you to like really sort of get used to the game. You get enough for a warband of like one character and like maybe 2, 3, 4 regiments, depending on what you're bringing. And you just go to town.
Mm-hmm.
And especially with the current boxes, I think the one that would probably be the biggest struggle is 100 Kingdoms, just because it's everything in that box is elite.
Your 800 level would be rough. Your 1200 would be pretty cool, but your 800 might be a little difficult.
Yeah. So like maybe start there. And like truly, like we're going to go more into detail about those starter sets later in a different video. We're going to go more into detail on like what all of that looks like later. Like that's not super this video, but stay tuned for that. But that's a great place to start. And then when you get to 1200 points, you can add a unit or two and some upgrades. You get to 1600 points after that. You can add like another warband full of dudes. And then before you know it, you're at 2K and you've got like 2 to 3 different warbands and a bunch of like models and regiments, and it all makes sense now. And you're like brewing cool stuff. You're getting extra stands in some of the units you really like, which is a handy thing you can do. It's just...
And it all felt better because you started higher.
Yeah. I think at 500, you have some factions just really struggle to even bring 3 regiments. Especially with the starter kits. So.
Yeah, it was difficult. I brought 2 regiments. That was my whole list.
Yeah,
2.
I think for 100 Kingdoms, I'd have to bring 2, maybe, with the new starter kit.
I had one unit of Uger, 1 unit of Bow Chosen, and then a Blooded and like some upgrades. It was a little hard.
Yeah.
A little hard.
Though both of those are great units. They're just not great there.
Not on their own. Yeah, so I would just get them points up. Get them up. Also, board size. The league we were in, we started on a smaller board. And as we mentioned with the Old Dominion, that can really change some stuff. And I get why some folks might prefer a smaller board when you have less models on the table so that they're closer together and really like beat the crap out of each other early. However, I think it skews some of your experiences, and also the missions are not designed at nearly as much for non-full-size boards. So I would just jump to the full-size 6 foot by 4 foot as quickly as possible. That would be my advice.
Yeah, like if you really want to start at a smaller board size, 800 points, you can. I would just go full board size, 800 points, and then add some extra terrain. Like I think we'll touch on terrain here in a second, but like the board size really does matter. With the way deployment works too, the smaller the board is, the harder it's going to be to deploy units, the harder it's going to be able to maneuver around because it's a rank and flank game. And just having a bigger board allows for like a little bit more leeway when you're a newer player, and it starts getting you ready for like how claustrophobic sometimes that board can feel at like 2K when there's like full armies on the table smacking against each other.
You do sometimes end up in a bit of a parking lot going like, oh, scooch it on by you. Like trying to get through your own guys, which is fun. It kind of puts some pressure on your deployment and your movement in an interesting way.
Yeah.
But that feels fun at 2K because your like amount of points to like the table size feels pretty good. But if you are on a smaller board at 800 points, that might not feel so good. So if we were going to run our own, we would just start on big boards and maybe like for y'all out there, consider that for yourself if you also think that might help you.
Yeah, but I was you touched on missions and I touched on terrain. So we're going to cover missions next because I think it's super relevant to the terrain boards. To board, then to terrain. And I think for missions,
we started off wrong.
Yeah, we started off with the missions that came in the starter books. I wouldn't start there. I would go get the download the tournament PDF pack.
It's free.
It's free.
Totally free.
Use it.
Free.
Use it as your Vanguard if they're cool with using it. I think it's way better. just because, like, first off, the ones inside of the rulebook have like a hard limit for when the game is accomplished and over. So, like, if you score early, you've finished the game. And so
Yep.
you stop learning what the later parts of the game are. And then you were like, oh, like, I guess that's busted. Like, that sucks. And the missions aren't as well designed, truly. The tournament missions are way, way more engaging, with a lot more interesting, like, tweaks to them. And they play really well, and they only keep playing more well the more you, like, play. Like, time and time again. And I think it makes it easier. And something our Vanguard does that I really like is just having one mission everyone's playing each time you all get together to play. And then it allows you guys to, like, sort of compare and contrast how each other's game went and talk about each mission and what was cool about that mission. And so it allows to, like, sort of get the gears moving of how these different ways you can interact with missions works.
Mm-hmm. And if you are going to run stuff out of the book, like, you don't want to go grab the tournament pack for whatever reason, that's cool. The big thing that, like, I recommend you use the tournament mission pack, but, like, I'm not a hard push. Just do what feels right for you. But I would hard push that if you're going to play the stuff out of just the starter book, like you're going to play those missions, I would really drop the auto win condition for, like, if a person scores, I don't know what the actual point number is.
I think it was,
like,
8. If someone scores 8 points,
game's
they automatically
instantly
win.
over.
Yeah.
Because you could score 8 fast.
Yeah.
And depending on the army you're fighting against, they might score 8 before you could get on the objective to stop them.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, by the time you even get the chance to move into range to try to engage with the game, they are on match point. There was nothing you could have done about that. It happened to us. It was really unfortunate. Luckily, it was the easiest thing in the world to fix. The Vanguard was at the shop with us. We were playing. Other people were playing. And it was one look at everybody going, y'all just want to drop this one line of text? And everyone gave a thumbs up, and we just kept on playing and had a good time.
Everyone was like, hell yeah, let's do that. That sounds way cooler.
Well, like, if the goal of your Escalation League is to play more Conquest, and that's, like, truly from the ground up, that's your goal for everything, I think the game ends instantly here idea is antithetical to the goal. If you want to play more Conquest, then having games of Conquest that end as early as possible doesn't help you to play more or learn more.
Mm-hmm.
So, that'd be the only thing I would hard push. That, like, if you're going to run your own league, I would drop that line out of the core book. If you do that alone, you're going to probably have a better time than we almost had.
Yeah. It is way better playing with the tournament mission packs. Also, they add some other unique and fun things, such as destroying objectives, which is super fun.
Fist fighting boxes.
Hell yeah, I love fist fighting boxes. But speaking of boxes, we're going to talk about terrain. Which are kind of like boxes, but, like, with roofs. Terrain.
Impactful. Wow.
Really. I know a lot of games say it. This game says it. Like, in skirmish games, it's pretty common for terrain to matter a ton, right? For it to kind of make or break an entire game system. But in most modern, like, most popular war games, it's just 40k and AOS. Less so 40k, more so AOS. AOS doesn't care about terrain. It's got a couple pieces and they're there. They, like, stop movement a little bit, but that's about it. 40k, it's all, like, one type of thing, really, and it provides one sort of bonus or negative, and it, like, prevents some shooting. Okay,
I would say it's very important, but not necessarily super complex.
Yes. In this game, Conquest, each piece of terrain gets a different, like, attribute, and that attribute does a different effect. It's like hindering removes impact attacks or inspired from charges through it.
Which is huge.
Yes. Obscuring cuts the amount of shots that happen to anything shooting through it in half. Huge. If something's fighting it while it's on water, it gets -1 clash, which is effectively -1 to hit.
Which is very rare in this game. That's huge.
Huge, right? Like, that's all important. And you need to sort of have a little bit of all of that on the table. Impassable here really matters because it forces how your movements have to work. Because impassable isn't just like, oh, I like move around a little bit. Like, no, you might not be able to move your entire regiment near that because of the way they'd have to position. You can use, and what it does is it creates unique situations where you can use the terrain to your benefit, especially if you're a faction like Nords, which gets to ignore some of those rules. Or if you're a faction who has a low amount of units and you need to leverage that terrain to your benefit, right?
Mm-hmm.
So having the right amount on the table matters. The tournament's pack suggests 6 to 8 pieces. I would highly suggest you take at least the 6. And for the lower point games, probably have them closer to 8.
Just to fill up that table a little bit.
Yeah. But like, you don't want to just bring 6 pieces of hindering and obscuring terrain. You're just like, no charges for anybody and less shots for everybody. No. What you want to do is you want to diversify everything. And you want to spread it out among the table, and you want to keep it somewhat symmetrical so that each person has a reasonable way of utilizing the terrain.
Each person's got to contend with some difficulties. Each person's got some advantages.
And preferably, your Vanguard would be willing to set that up ahead of time for you. Just to make it a little bit easier for everyone involved.
At least for your first few games, I think, until you kind of get it around your head. Because truly, I have seen some terrain setups in this game that have decided the game. Like, you can see it online in some battle reports. Mm-hmm. Like, the people will put the minimum recommended 6 terrain pieces on the table, and then they will throw them as far away from, like, the objectives and play area as possible, so that they are more out of the way. And I don't think that was done intentionally, but what it left was a very, very out in the open, no cover, no terrain sort of fighting area around the objectives, which can favor one army or another.
Mm-hmm. And I think that this game plays really well with the terrain. I just think it does. And if you don't have a Vanguard who's willing to build the tables for everyone, or there's just a lot of you and he can't do it, or they can't do it, you have this knowledge. Use it to your advantage. Mm-hmm. There's a couple of channels out there who do battle reports that really dive into it. I think Mass from Bunk Table goes into some of it with his battle reports early on of like, this is the terrain that mattered in this fight, and here's why. Pretty useful. I would just like, if you're a battle report guy, maybe watch some of them and sort of like take some notes about why the terrain mattered and like why that position did X, Y, or Z.
Yeah, I think for us, what we really tried to do was when like we went to go make boards for ourselves or our opponents, to like detach ourselves from our own armies and our own benefits as much as we can, and just try to make an engaging table that is sort of neutrally difficult for both of us to have to contend with. Mm-hmm. I got some shooting. I don't want obscuring anywhere on the table. Well, all right, I'm going to put some of that near the middle. My opponent is running all big ponies. They don't want obstructing. Well, we're going to have some obstructing somewhere up in there. Neither of us want to stand on water. Well, we're going to put some water somewhere. And then it's push and pull, mm-hmm. which I think, generally speaking, one, it's good sportsmanship. Like, it's just being a good opponent and try to like help out a little. But two, I think it flexed our brains in weird ways and helped us to learn the game more, because we got weird, unique challenges that we would sometimes look at a terrain like setup and go, huh. Okay, let's figure out how we're going to handle that. And it was cool. It's a fun time. Also, it's zone terrain, which means you can use footprints rather than like necessarily huge buildings and stuff.
Yeah, and a lot of it can just be like mousepad terrain if you really want to, or if you're familiar with the Song of Ice and Fire, you can use their little terrain pieces that come in their starter kits, because we have, and it's been pretty handy.
Yeah, because you have to think, like, all of your models are on movement trays, and you mm-hmm. have to get those movement trays through the terrain. And if you have, like, hilly with a lot of topography sort of terrain or buildings, or actual, like, dense forest models that are on the table, you're not going to get movement trays and stuff through there, not in line. So it was really nice to have, like, a Song of Ice and Fire stuff underneath, where we could just take the actual 3D tree models off the table, but there's a footprint underneath them.
Mm-hmm.
Move our stuff over it, no problem, and then just put the trees back aesthetically around the unit, but we could still see the footprint of the terrain itself underneath them.
Yeah, I think that really helps. First for visibility and for gameplay part, because like you still want the board to look cool, but like you also want to be able to play the game without it being finicky and frustrating.
Yeah, and I think that was just like our best compromise. So we recommend you try something like that and just see if it works for you. In general, I think the big thing for me is that there were some hurdles, right? Mm-hmm. Obviously, like we just talked about a number of hurdles. There were definitely some things that were friction points and could have been better. However, even with all of that, I think for me the big question is like, did we have an incredible time?
Yes.
Yes.
Like 100%.
Easy. Done. Dusted.
Yes. I continue playing this game. I have a second faction. I want other people to get in the game. I want to advocate for the game, and I want to bring other people into the game. A lot of that has to do with this Escalation League. And the game is just great. Like, it is a lot of fun to play. It's a lot of fun to talk about. A lot of fun to, like, conversate with. Just the nature of how the game plays allows you to sort of build a rapport with your opponent. Less like I do a thing to you, you do a thing to me. It's more of I'm going to do an action, and you're going to respond to said action. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And it leads to like really good conversations post-game, which for me, I think is the ultimate goal of an Escalation League should be, which is building a community of people that will discuss after the game is over what happened. Right? And like, how do we improve? Or how, like next time we play, what do we want to try to do? Right? Kind of push that ever forward. Have these conversations with your opponents and with your playgroup to sort of like understand aspects of the game and like learn from each other, right? Like, yeah, there's a Discord. You can ask questions on the Discord, and people that are very helpful. There's lots of good people on there that will answer so many questions. It's different in person, where like you have the stuff in front of you, and you guys can have conversations about it. Because really, the people online don't know your local meta. The local meta is the people that you're playing with. So if you want to improve, you're going to need to talk to them and like discover what you're going to do from there. I mean, our local meta has a ton of 100 Kingdoms players now. I'm one of them. Very few Wadroon players. I'm also one of them. Hey, I have 2 factions and very few city-states. But like,
also almost no Nords. I think I was the only Nords player by the end.
Yeah. So like, you want to improve the game. You want to build more community. You want more people to play with. That's how you do it, right? It's through these Escalation Leagues. It's not so much about who's winning, who's losing, what the prizes are. It's about playing the games, learning, and cultivating more, getting more people into it. So like for me, that like this 100% completed the objectives. Did I win every game? No. Did I win most of my games? No, I probably went 50-50. But every game I will say I learned something. And now I'm going into playing a ton of 2K games, excited, and I feel prepared to actually like improve in those games and win those games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sometimes it's helpful to have an opponent that you just played a game against. And when you go, hey, like I was kind of struggling with this unit here. I really don't feel like I used them all that well. Do you have any thoughts of like maybe what I could have done about them or done with them? And they just played you. They're going to have some thoughts. That's wonderful feedback you could get from a person if you set up a really cool, like, learning environment. Removed from just win rates.
A good example is last weekend. I played against Drew's Old Dominion. And, like, I played very aggressive with my hunting pack and my Raptor Riders. Arguably, I threw them away. And, like, after the game, Drew just was like, hey, I noticed that you sort of threw these away. And from my perspective, if you would have done this differently, I probably would have felt pressured in a different way. And, like, I wouldn't have caught that. I caught that because Drew was willing to bring it up and be like, hey, and we've cultivated that sort of community to be able to make those discussions.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
It just helps. Like, truly, all around. It raises all boats.
Yeah. And so, like, I'm going to be a better Wadroon player because my opponent called that out. Right? And now I know, oh, well, like, I got to change the way I'm looking at these units, how I'm using them.
And for Drew's end, like Drew is now talked through that counterplay and is prepared for it. At least
Yes.
knows what to expect if he encounters it again, either against you or someone else.
Yeah.
Like you both got markedly better in terms of experience because of a conversation like that. Now compound that over multiple games in a league across a couple of months. I think you would end up with quite a bit more knowledge than if you didn't try to implement a learning environment with some like post-game chats.
Yeah.
And I think it also kind of takes the pressure off of people to just win and instead to just learn. And people learn better that way. And also just, I think most people have more fun that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, this was really, really fun. Like, I have qualms about, like, the base game itself. And obviously, there are things I think we could improve about leagues and stuff. But that's not a knock against a game. I mean, I've never gone to an event and left and thought, there is 0 improvements that could be made.
Perfect. 10 out of 10. 5 out of 7. Impossibly good game.
Sorry, it's actually the Buck Cherry concert. 10 out of 10 event. Nothing could be improved. God,
That
so
is
much
patently false.
so much could have been improved. So like that's not a knock against the game, and that's the thing I kind of want to push back against is that like I think online, in the general internet, a lot of people you make some money off of stirring the pot and being angry, and like if there's a flaw with a thing, you could drum up like I hate thing, and it does pretty well in an algorithm. And I think it kind of leads to a subconscious assumption that talking about trying to improve or streamline or change a thing or even just having some friction points with a thing from your experiences means you dislike things. Not at all true. Truly not true. In fact, like things so much, want to run own league of thing and want to try to make that league more welcoming for people so everyone could have a better time doing thing.
Mm-hmm.
Very different than I dislike thing. Because it's really fun. I think the last thing I would change is like it's a minor one. But I would probably change how points are handed out. Like I would,
Yeah.
I think our Vanguard was very much on the right path. Like, hey, you get points by just like playing a game. You get points by building and painting minis, and then like if you win, you get a bonus point. Not a bad idea in a slow grow league. It's like incentivizes you to like keep up with the league and to try to like hobby more, which is great. I think the core of that is very good. But I think if we run our own, we'd be better off doing sort of like, okay, you get points for playing a game.
Mm-hmm.
Each game you play, you get a point. Play as many games as you would like. Here are your set matchups. Go, go, go. Also, if you built minis, you get a point. Thanks. Appreciate
Cool.
you. Do you want to paint minis? Cool. Here's point. Love that. There's a point for you because you painted some minis. Did you write some fluff for your guys? Did you write any little narrative thing? Cool. Bonus points. Love that. Thank you. So then it takes the pressure out of winning and just instead playing and learning. Also, I think the difficulty that John and I sort of ran into because of the factions we're playing is that trying to paint 500 or 1,000 points of a faction can be a very different number of models depending on faction.
And depending on what you're building in the faction, like I could build a Wadroon list that was just like Thunder Riders and like a couple of other things, and then like very few models. But I didn't. I got a bunch of orcs.
Yeah, I painted out of the starter sets for my Nords. Like I painted what I had. I wanted to take like a generalist little bit of everything, so I'm trying to learn the faction. I'm not really skewing at anybody. But that meant for my 1,000 point game, I had to paint 45 minis.
Yeah.
To play my 1K game. My 1K opponent, Eric, he owns the shop. I think he had maybe 14 models to paint. And both of us has the same amount of time to paint them. So I think that could cause some pressure for people depending on their faction. Of just saying, like, point. Based off of how many points you have painted.
Yeah, and instead I think there's an easy solution, which is just like units, or just like, did you paint stuff? The way our Vanguard did was that you paint half the amount you need for that step up. I think it was like 250.
$250
for each. But like, and that's not that hard to get. But it does kind of take the pressure off someone having to make that math of just being like, they can paint what they want in their army. Paint 3 stands of anything. Okay, cool.
I don't care what it is.
Like, all right, 3 stands of militia, got you. 3 individual characters, each on a stand, cool, got you.
Love it.
3 monsters, well, that seems like a lot. All right, cool. Paint 3.
Great job, you little overachiever. I was going to give you 2 per for monsters, but like, wow, well done.
Yeah. Like, it doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to like do complex, weird math. You can just set it to like stands or like regiments. Stands, I think, is a little bit easier, but maybe nothing.
Just throwing ideas out there for people. I think we should try out stands, but yeah, just throwing out ideas that like it could be a pressure point for some players, especially if you got like family and jobs and other stuff you got to do.
Especially if you were a vanguard or a person running an event and you were trying to provide a level of reward. So if you were like trying to give out little trinkets or like maybe some of that cool Augum if you're getting it from the store, or if you're trying to do any of that other stuff that Parabellum gives out that's super cool, you're definitely going to want to have like some sort of structure set up that doesn't feel punishing and sort of just feels enabling, right? Like you are wanting people to come to the thing, you're wanting people to play it, but you don't want people to feel like they're losing out because they're bad at the game, or they're just not haven't picked it up quick enough,
or they haven't painted fast enough, or
they didn't need get to change the coolest their list. Model yet, or
their shipment got delayed. Like, you know, any number of life things. You want to just like, I think some minor changes can make it even more inviting, which is always just good for a game that I think is worthy of growing.
Yeah,
I think it's really fun, and there are people out there who would be into it, and I don't want to inadvertently turn them away.
Yeah, I mean, as like sort of like a final note for me on like the Escalation League as a whole is that like I really want to find a way to make the escalation feel like work and be better, simply because I think this game has the ability to be an impeccable game for getting new people into wargaming. The game itself can be a little dense and difficult. War games just kind of are. But I think this game has great points of entry when it comes to price, when it comes to like models being cool. Like painting these models feels really good because they're bigger, which adds a lot to the experience of being a wargamer. And so I think getting the Escalation League dialed in so that experience is also like addicting and fun to go and do this social event once every couple of weeks or once a month would really push like this as a really new person friendly game. I think that'd be great.
Yeah, truly. And if you're out there and you're listening to this and you want to play, again, the shop we play at is Tactical Treat Gaming in the east side of Cincinnati. I highly recommend it. I don't know any other shops anywhere near here that like demo games or show it off. It is a great way to learn. I don't know when there will be another league or what that will look like. If it will have some of these things integrated, maybe even cooler ideas than what we came up with. But I can say that there will be some league at some time. And, if you're interested, I highly recommend trying an Escalation League.
Yeah.
Please.
And if you got more questions about Conquest, we're going to be making more stuff about it. We're going to be making plenty more content about it. Ask your questions down below. We'll try to answer them if we can. All the usual, like, subscribe, yada, yada. Share it with your friends. Go reach out to other content creators, see what they got going on for Conquest. But
we appreciate you. We are going to be working on, here in the near future, some of those one-player starter set faction focus videos. So we can break down each box by faction. And if you're thinking about getting into an Escalation League with one of them faction starter boxes, might be a video for you. Keep an eye out. For now, though, that's been all of our opinions. Bonafide and Kentucky Fried. We'll see you all in the next one.